Welcome to C-Suite Strategy, Elevate Every Move, Scale Beyond. And our topic of discussion is the breakdown advantage, leading through chaos, coming out stronger. Your go-to podcast on tech, cybersecurity, strategy, and growth. This is Madhuri, your host for today's session. Let's explore what coming out stronger actually means. A special welcome to all tuning in to the Power of Knowing Forum podcast, episode 274th, live on LinkedIn. We are honored to have Deepa Chandrasekaran, TEDx speaker, career coach, author, keynote speaker, IFS informed coach joining us. Let's welcome our esteemed speaker to our podcast event. Hi Deepa, welcome to
Hi
the show.
Madhuri, thank you so much. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you. So can I have a brief introduction about yourself for the audience?
Sure. Hello everyone. I'm Deepa Chandrasekaran. I'm a career acceleration coach. I come with over 25 years of experience, out of which 20 plus years were in the corporate and high-end delivery roles. I was handling projects, teams, and in 2017 is when I had that pull of moving out from there and doing something more for myself. So I left the corporate world and I entered the learning and training and development and coaching world where I upskilled myself, and now I work with corporate leaders. I help them build purposeful, fulfilling careers. And I also undergo a lot of training myself to keep updated and to make it easy for people to transition into their dream life and their purpose. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm so happy to be here again.
That's so inspiring, Deepa. You seem to be an epitome of, a lady who has to come out of the comfort zone and, look for the fulfilling career. Really nice. Very nice.
Thank
So,
you.
Deepa, before we plunge into the topic, can I have a brief breakdown on the topic?
Yeah, absolutely. If the audience here is guessing, why are we combining two very different words together? They look like opposites. The breakdown advantage. Now, what does that even mean? So, I want to give a context of why we came up with this topic and what are we going to talk about. So, if we visualize breakdown, Madhuri, there are very, very serious things that come to our mind. Breakdown typically feels like disaster. It feels like a
Correct.
crisis. It feels
Yes.
like loss. And if
Failure.
you look at failure from an organizational perspective, it's as if the company has gone bankrupt and everything is closing down. From a personal perspective, also breakdown could have a meaning as if people are getting into depression, anxiety. So it has a very serious annotation to it. Now, why do I say that there's a breakdown advantage? Because what is needed to move beyond breakdown and what is needed to rise beyond breakdown and what leads to breakdown is extremely important. So I believe that the reason why we have breakdowns is when we have reached the level where no growth is possible. Like this is the best that can happen with what we know, and we need to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. And when we are not doing it ourselves, something in the environment and life is our biggest teacher. So it moves us in that direction by throwing a breakdown at us. And it forces us to reinvent, it forces us to move outside our comfort zone, push our boundaries, and if we do it the right way, breakdowns lead to breakthroughs. So that's why we are combining two very counterintuitive words. And I would love to get into a conversation around, how can we make that happen and what does it really look like?
It's so true. Actually, the moment read the topic, it's so paradoxical. That
Yes,
intrigued me all the more to know about it, actually. Yeah.
absolutely.
So When was the last time a crisis revealed a blind spot you didn't even know existed?
Yeah, so, and I'll talk about something that all of us have experienced. So it's not personal to me, but it's personal to everybody who's with us today and everybody on this planet, in fact. So remember COVID, right? What a tough phase it was, and what a challenging time it was for all of us. So nobody was left out of that. And it was a breakdown. It was a breakdown of a biggest kind, right? Where it was not a nation that was impacted, but it was every soul on this planet.
Yes.
In some way or the other, we were all impacted by what happened. And while there was a lot of misery and there was crisis and there was a lot of loss, but what emerged from COVID was a sense of unity, was a sense of people understanding each other's misery. And if I go to the corporate perspective, work-life balance or hybrid working or people becoming productive working from home, those things were unimaginable before COVID. So, and personally as a coach, I felt that during COVID there were a lot of more people who came to me to delve deeper into
Mhm.
themselves, to investigate more into who they were. They wanted to know their purpose, they wanted to know the meaning. So there was a lot of turmoil, but at the same time there was a lot of curiosity around what was happening. So I would say COVID is the biggest example which is relatable to all of us, which reveals several blind spots for all of us. And for a lot of my clients and my coaches, life has changed after that in big ways.
True. Right.
So yeah, it's a leveler, and a crisis and breakdown just makes us think and makes us reflect and makes us introspect. And if we do it the right way, there's a lot to learn, and it brings a lot of strength and resilience if we go through it the right way.
Something like a revolution, like, we can term it as before COVID and after COVID.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So, what specific data or capability did you gain only because the system failed? Like, even if the system failed, like, is there any takeaway or any insight that you actually gain out of it?
Yeah, so like I was talking about, breakdowns are when we have been trying to manage the status quo and trying to conform to the most common ways of doing things. We are social beings, and unfortunately or fortunately, we've all been brought up within the same society and within the expectations of what the society has from us, right? So there are meanings that we have given to all of these words. So success has a different meaning. Improvement has a meaning. In fact, just today morning, I was having a conversation with a client, and she was worried that she's not making improvement. And it was, I was seeing the improvement, but unfortunately for her, her the people around her or the people that she wanted to prove that she's doing well were not seeing that improvement. So we have all given these meanings, and we are trying to conform to a certain way of being, and constantly working towards that. So when breakdown happens, the system collapses. It could be personal, it could be organizational, and we are forced to rethink. Like Adam Grant says, rethink again. So it forces us to look at what we have not been looking at, right? We see a lot of things, but we don't notice things. So there's a facade that we put in front of us, and then we are just living to that facade, trying to manage the status quo. And then a breakdown comes, and we can't control that facade. It's gone. It's just dissolved. And now we are forced to rethink. We are forced to replan. We are forced to re-execute. And some of my coaches come to me when they are going through the breakdown stage,
Mhm.
because before that, things were normal. They were working hard, they were overachieving, they were spending 12 hours at work, they were feeling they were productive, they got a promotion every 2 years, all was well. But suddenly, it was not so well after all. So that's the moment when people start questioning. So breakdown literally collapses a lot of things, but it also helps us to bring and rebuild a lot of things.
Correct, correct. So it's all about the changes in perspectives and priorities also. That even
Yes,
I
yes.
have noticed, what excited us earlier ceases to excite us, eventually after a while. That's something, which we notice. We are not so
Yeah,
happy with that kind of progress. There is something else. There's something more that we really need, that, that we just get
yeah,
into that mode.
absolutely. And life is all about progress.
Yeah,
And what we've been taught is competition. What we've
correct.
been taught is to run the race. What we've been taught is keep going faster and keep achieving. And it's very performance driven, achievement driven. So everybody is just trying to perform better and better and better, and comparing to each other and saying, I'm better than person A or am I better than person B? And that becomes our baseline, that becomes our standard. And that's not a productive way of living life. So sometimes for us to see what is needed from us in life and how can I become a better version of just myself, right?
Exactly.
How can I be better than who I was yesterday
Yesterday, right.
is is something that we all have to focus on. And when we don't do that and we constantly keep trying to perform to the status quo and conform to what is normally expected from us, is when life says, okay, crisis calling, here you go. Now you think what you have to do, otherwise you're going to get dissolved, right? So, yeah, so breakdowns are important, but they can lead us in either direction.
Correct.
It's important to also have a strategy to navigate the breakdown. That's
Right.
important as well.
Right. So, how do you actually distinguish a growth grade failure from a reputation destroying fiasco?
That's such a brilliant question, right? Because both look so similar.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, whether a breakdown is or you know a failure is growth related, or it is just
Hmm.
to get us into even a major crisis from where there is no turnaround.
Right.
So here's how I see it, Madhuri. And if we have a north star and we can look at organizations, or we can look at people who are striving and creating purpose in their life. So if we have a north star and we have a goal, again, there's a big myth that career acceleration, and I work with so many coaches, and they come to me thinking that if I'm accelerating in my career and I'm doing well, then it has to be a line like this, like it has to go up, 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 up. So that's the myth that we all carry, that any kind of growth will always look like this. But growth has its ups and downs, right? Now, the important thing is to understand that the next steps that you're taking, is it taking you closer to who you want to become,
Ah, exactly.
right? So in that process, there might be a valley in your growth path. You might again have to push up to reach the point from where you actually fell down. And then sometimes it might be a stagnation. And again, there might be a dip, or there might be a peak. So when we know where we are moving towards and what kind of a person that we are becoming, and it's not a game of comparison and becoming better than the other person that we compare ourselves to. And in that process, if there are valleys and if there are failures and if there are bad days, I would say that's growth related, because it's still helping you move forward. So when we focus on ourselves and we focus on our own journey, and when organizations focus on taking the path that will help their people to become better, right? And they're moving towards their vision and working on their values. In that process, the valleys are growth related. But when we are the opposite of this, when we are constantly just comparing with each other and we want to become better than and there's a lot of hustling, and there's only like outwardly external driven, and I just want more money because somebody's earning X and I want to earn X plus 10, or 2x or 5x, then what we face in that process is not healthy. I would term it like that. It's
Right.
not healthy because um and it's not sustainable also. The breakdown that happens because of this culture will be a breakdown that will need a lot more effort to come back to a stable state than the failures or the challenges we experience when we are on our path and it's just a bad day, and we've not met a goal or a milestone got missed, and then we just come back and move forward. So
Right.
it's the intention behind our efforts which I think decide whether it is uh, healthy or unhealthy.
True. Even during the catastrophe, like, if you're not anxious and even you can foster positivity, even in that, that itself is growth. So it's
Yeah.
like, you don't need to adhere to the social expectations all the time to define the term growth as such.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's, yeah, true.
absolutely, absolutely. The challenge is that, while growing up, and there's another big word called meritocracy, right?
Hmm.
So we have all learned that this is a meritocratic society. Now, what does that word mean? We can spend like a minute there, because meritocratic means that I am the owner of who I become. So everything is in my hands, right?
Hmm.
So if I work hard, I will reach where I want to reach.
Correct.
So people who are successful, they are assumed to know everything. They are assumed to be working extremely hard, and it is assumed that they have taken themselves there. So everything is in our hands, right? That's a meritocratic society. But there's the opposite of this. So if people have not been able to reach where they wanted to reach, then we call them losers or we call them failures, which is a very, very strong word. So I want to also bring the attention to, while I'm a strong believer that if I believe I can, I will, but there are also other forces that we are not the universal force. There are so many things happening around us due to
Right.
which we might not reach where we want to reach. Right? So this whole concept of meritocracy, which puts the people who get what they get here and those who are not able to achieve what they want here. And
Right.
that's the gap. It's a huge gap, right? So the people here are always under depression and their anxiety and they're nervous and they don't feel they belong, they don't get the validation. So all of that happens to these people. Whereas these people feel like, oh, I'm the boss, I have done it,
So it's all
right?
about what you feel within, actually.
Yeah, it's a lot to do with that. And that within can be within a person or it can be within the organization as well.
Organization also, right? So that actually reflects your spiritual side, Deepa. Whatever you spoke right now, yes, it does.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
That's a
Deepa,
topic to talk about in another podcast because, yeah, I moved from being religious to being spiritual, and there's a
yes,
story to it, but that's for some other time.
yeah, true. So, why does the belief that failures ruin careers still dominate boardrooms in 2025?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question because, and I believe that it all stems from our childhood. And who are in the boardrooms? Like we think boardroom is a place where there are different people sitting there. Now I think boardrooms are a place where there are children who are who are dressed up as adults sitting
Mm.
there, right? So a boardroom is full of leaders who carry their mindset in that boardroom. And when we talk about boardrooms, we're talking about the CEOs, we're talking about the CXOs, we're talking about the senior leaders who actually influence the culture of an organization. So, so if I am sitting in that boardroom or I am the CEO of an organization, I carry myself into that organization, right? And what that means is I carry my mindset into that organization.
Correct.
So if I have learned to be performance oriented, achievement oriented, for me, how people see me is more important than my personal growth and my personal journey, then that's the culture that the organization is going to take because culture is mostly top down,
Right.
right? What leaders think is how it will percolate down to the ground, the people working, at every level.
Yes.
So so in boardrooms, when there are leaders who are hiding mistakes, they are not being
Mm.
vulnerable, they are not openly talking about the challenges that they are facing. They are only focused on growth and numbers and P&L, right? Then that's the culture which also percolates in the organization. And
Correct.
then there are people, the professionals working in the organization, they are afraid to make mistakes, they are afraid to voice out their opinions, they are afraid to talk about something that went wrong, and that is an organization which is headed for a breakdown very soon because the best things that help us grow like creativity, innovation, excellence, those cannot be those cannot be sustained in a fear-driven environment,
Totally get it. Right.
right? So these leaders who are sitting in the boardrooms, if they have grown up to believe that the only way to succeed is through achievement, through performance, through meritocracy, through fear, that's what they have learned. That's what has worked for them. And that's the culture that they are building.
True, true, true. See, to encapsulate, you mean to say, let there be transparency even in the boardrooms. It's okay, even though even if they
Oh,
have to discuss some
absolutely.
failures or how they navigated very challenging situations. So it is okay to discuss about that and to be more transparent as such.
Yeah, yeah. And Brene Brown says that vulnerability is a strength, it's not a
Right.
weakness, right?
Yes.
Most of us have been taught to not be vulnerable. We have been taught
Exactly.
to show our strength. You know, even if I
Mm.
am depressed on the inside, I go and if somebody asks me, how are you doing,
Correct.
Deepa? I'll say, oh, I'm great,
Yeah.
right? But it's okay to say, I'm not doing as well, or I'm nervous about what's going to come up now, or, I had a bad day today. It's okay to be that,
Right.
right?
True.
So
True.
boardrooms need more authenticity, boardrooms need more vulnerability, and boardroom needs leaders who can show the organization what it means to sustainably grow and what does it take to grow.
True.
I think that's healthy growth.
Very, very good perspective on that. So, what language should leaders retire to stop shaming intelligent risk taking?
Hmm. Okay, so when I was working in corporate, and yeah, sometimes I tell and I reflect back on my times, and I say that if I would go back right now and play the role that I was playing, I would probably do it very differently. And because there's so many learnings that I have had over the last 8 years that I've been an entrepreneur, and I've been on this journey of learning and growing and working on myself. Um, that that there are certain things that I've learned which are harmful to say in the organization, right? There's language means a lot, and a language can define you, your environment, and how people feel in that environment. So one of the most important, I would say, responsibility of a leader is to create a psychologically safe environment. That's been spoken about a lot these days, where we say create a safe environment for people. But what does a safe environment really mean, right? So we are physically safe, right? We are sitting in AC rooms and we are sitting in huge buildings and we have food. So there's no scarcity of anything as such. But then why do people feel unsafe? And why is there this conversation about making it safe, right? So safety is language creates safety as well. So, for example, if I make a mistake, right, and if I go to my boss and say, I have missed the deliverable yesterday, I'm sorry I didn't inform you, but that milestone is gone and I have not been able to send the deliverable as I planned. Now, if the boss comes at me and says, you always do this, you are a problem, I shouldn't have trusted you. Now, how am I going to feel if that happens? Right? I'm going to be very scared. Now, with layoffs happening all around us, my first thought is, okay, this is the end of me in this
Yeah.
organization, right? So I feel unsafe in that moment because I'm admitting, I'm accepting, I have gone there. But instead of looking at, okay, what support did you need in that moment,
Right.
right? What could we have done better to help you meet your
Mm.
milestone? What
Correct.
what can we do better next time to support you? Instead of that, if the leaders are coming at each other, and it could be their own insecurities, right? But the people don't know that they are having insecurities. So I have a coachee that I'm working with right now, and she's on a break. She's taken a sabbatical, and I love that people are doing that these days, that they are escaping the toxic environment even if it means that they don't have a job right now,
Correct.
right? So it was such a toxic environment where the leaders had no idea how to deal with their people. And there were random statements being made that you are a mess, you don't know how to handle this, you know nothing about how to deliver projects, and why are you even here? You are a bad hire. All of that is only keep taking the motivation down and down and further down, right? So these statements, I would urge leaders to get
Correct.
trained, and that's the trait of a healthy organization. Are you upskilling your leaders to have hard conversations? How to give good feedback. It is not about not having hard conversations, but it is about what can I
How
do
you
to
put it.
support them better,
So that
right? So,
empathy is
yeah,
something which they actually have to
oh,
develop. Hmm.
absolutely. Empathy and compassion,
Yeah, true.
right? And
That,
I would just add to it that it is also about how we deal with those parts of us, is how we deal with the external people as well. So if I make a mistake and I thrash myself on it, like I put myself down and I have a huge voice in my head, the inner critic which says, you are useless, you are bad, you can never do this, you are never going to make it in life, you are a failure. If that's my voice inside my head, that's the same voice that I'm going to use with people around me.
true. Right.
So leaders have to reflect, they have to introspect, they have to get into this journey of not spirituality but self awareness,
Self-awareness.
because, yeah, they impact a lot of people around them.
True, true. So is the no failure KPI secretly inflating operational risk? What's your stance on this?
Is a no failure KPI? I think so. In the long run, it will impact because if we are propagating no failure zones, right? People are not allowed to make mistakes. People are not allowed to voice their opinions. People can't say that's an idea which is not going to work. Then they are just again conforming to a set guideline. Like, you tell me what needs to be done, I will do it and I'll go home. So there is no responsibility, there is no accountability,
Accountability.
there is there is no investment of myself in the organization,
Right.
right? So now this phrase is a phrase which is being used a lot in the corporate these days, and it's like, bring your whole self to work.
Hmm.
Have you heard this? Like, every leader will say, bring your whole self to work. Now, what does that even mean? Right? It means that you have the environment to play,
Hmm.
play in terms of taking risks, navigating your ideas, talking about what's going to work, not work. This is an environment for you where you can be free to experiment. That is what it means to bring your whole self to work. But when a person brings their whole self to work, they get rejected. They hear the language that we just spoke about.
Right.
That performance appraisal goes for a toss, right?
Hmm.
There might be layoff lingering around.
Hmm.
So if they bring themselves to work, and these are the consequences of that, who's going to bring their whole self to work,
True.
right? So it's important to understand what are you asking your people to
Correct.
be in the organization, and then proactively build systems around it. There's so much of bias, there's so much of favoritism, there's so much of stereotyping, and everybody is saying things, but I don't think they understand the meaning of those things,
Hmm. True.
right? So that's where, when I work with coaches, and these are all senior leaders who are coming at different phases of their careers, and they are they are literally fed up of what's happening around them.
Yeah.
And it's a breakdown of a healthy kind, because they understand that being a victim is also not the answer to this,
True.
right? And
So that's
hopefully some of
actually
these
very
people,
welcoming that they're taking
yeah,
this
it's
as
very,
a role.
very welcoming.
Yeah. It's really
Yes,
nice.
yes. And it hopefully these are the leaders who are also going to lead organizations in the future,
Right.
right? So if
Right.
I work with,
Yes.
like a hundred coaches, and these are
Hmm.
all leaders who are at the mid-level or senior level, and tomorrow they are going to either build their organization or lead the organization, I have hope. I have hopes that people who work with them, for them, will really be able to bring their whole self to work.
I'm sure you're going to manifest that.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
So, which dashboard data keeps you decisive in the first 30 minutes of an outrage?
Yeah, so I think it's about what is the attitude of the people during that time, right? So operational can be, like the last question that you asked, if there's a failure avoidance culture in the organization, at some point it's going to impact, because there's no innovation, there's no freedom, there's no, it's all performance, it's all fear. So nobody's going to do anything. Somehow the organization will survive for a time and then there's a breakdown, right? So what will help us during that breakdown is to, and organizations who differ and bounce back are what are the organizations where we can actually see the difference about what is happening when they're going through this breakdown period, right? So it's about, are people able to trust each other? So, I'm not talking about the first 30 minutes, but I'm talking more in terms of what's the psychology of people when they're experiencing that breakdown,
Right.
right? So if it's 100 member organization and there's a breakdown, like, do 80 people just resign and go? Do they find like a better opportunity and they're out of it? Like, so what's the level of attrition? What
Mm.
is the level of layoff? Even in COVID, there were organizations who did not lay off in spite
People.
of their business going
Yes.
down, in spite of the P&L not being as great, but they retained their people, right? They gave them 6 months of no pay leave and they said, you are on the payrolls, but we're not going to pay you because we don't have the money.
Correct.
But they were back in the organizations when things became better,
Yeah.
right? So there are very, very crucial attitudinal, things that we can observe when a breakdown happens.
Right.
So, is there vulnerability? Are people asking for support? Is there trust amongst people? Can people own up to their mistakes? Is the team coordinating and having conversations with each other? Are there silos created in the organization? Is there blame game happening? Is there shame in owning up to the mistakes that have happened? What's the whole culture? The culture actually shows up in a crisis more than in peace,
Right. Right.
right? So all of these factors will help us see how the organization was really doing during the peaceful times, the non-breakdown times. Because during breakdown, everything is chaos, right?
We can
So
take
how
that as
do
a
we show
metrics
up?
to actually judge the organization, during the tough times, how they're actually navigating and how they're being very employee friendly. So, that actually shows what the organization's culture is and all that.
Yeah, so the attrition, the layoffs,
Mm.
right? The clients that just leave and go to a different, like, okay, today I have a bad day. Are my clients just leaving me and moving to my competition, or they are
Right.
sustaining with me?
Mm.
Right? All of those are numbers and data which over a period of time will tell us the real culture of the organization. We
Right.
can have values pasted on a poster and put it there. We
Exactly.
can talk about all of these things, but then in practice, are the leaders living those values? That's the big question that we have to
Yeah.
ask.
True. So, what's your take on this? Like, what ritual ensures the lesson scales beyond the crisis team?
What rituals, right? Okay, so I'll talk, you know, into on two verticals. So one is like a personal, as a person, if I'm undergoing breakdown, what can I do? And then as an organization, if there's a breakdown period, then what should be done to handle that breakdown. So I think at a personal level, it's very, very important to self reflect. I'm a big proponent of reflection, and everybody that I work with, it's mandatory for them to spend 5 minutes at the end of the day to go back and look at their day,
Right.
right? And to reflect back and ask some simple questions. What made me smile today? What made me sad today? What got me frustrated today? Right? When did I feel despair and helpless?
Mm. Right.
If we reflect back, we will learn a lot from just one day,
True.
right? And these are the data points in our personal life that can help us become better the next day. Because when you reflect back and you identify situations and you identify people and you identify the environment which is not supporting you, you can take better decisions the next day. But if you don't reflect, right? And reflection will avoid a meltdown. So there's a difference between a breakdown and a meltdown. A meltdown is when suddenly one day morning when I'm just not able to get up from the bed. I slept okay, but then The morning is depressing. There are all negative thoughts in my mind. I feel like I have a total failure. There's anxiety. I can't step out and go to work. I feel as if I'm an imposter and, people are out there to get me. All of those thoughts just overpower us. And then we are in bed. That's all. Right? It's very difficult to step out, or it's very difficult to rationalize and compartmentalize our thoughts.
True. That's true.
So but if we do regular reflection,
Yeah.
then we don't get into these extreme states,
Right.
right? Because we identify them beforehand, and we are able to take proper actions, reach out to coaches, reach out to mentors, reach out to therapists, reach out to our bosses, reach out to your support system,
Right.
right? So these are some things that reflection,
Mm.
journaling, just identifying what am I thinking right now,
Mm.
right? So I follow this person, Alain de Botton, and he says that if people have trouble sleeping,
Mm.
it's the thoughts that they didn't pay attention to during the day are
Right.
craving attention during the night.
During the night. So it's all pent up emotions which are actually, troubling them as such.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because during the day we are so busy that we can
Exactly.
push things out,
Ah, right.
right? There's a thought that comes and says, you're not doing as well,
Mm.
and I just distract myself in TV or food or
Correct.
phone or Instagram or something, and I don't pay attention to that thought. Now, that
Correct.
thought is not going anywhere. Just because we have not given it attention during the day doesn't mean that it has disappeared,
Correct.
right? So, at night, when there's peace and there's quiet and we're supposed to sleep, I have clients who are on their bed for like 2 hours before sleep hits them. That's the situation that they come in because they're just not able to break free of these thoughts that they haven't paid attention to for years together.
True.
That's insomnia, right?
Right.
So that's on the personal side where reflection, journaling, self introspection, building a support system around yourself, feeling safe both professionally and personally, these are some things that help us stay sane.
Correct. You actually worded my thoughts. I do tell my students, see, at the end of the day, just spend 5 minutes on self evaluation. Pat your back in case you've done something really good. Suppose you failed in a particular aspect. So do rethink. Could you have done better? Was there any possibility that you could have learned from that situation? So spending that 5 minutes of time on self evaluation really makes a lot of difference as an individual. And you just
Yeah,
worded it perfectly.
absolutely, absolutely.
So
And
you're
I
more a
just add,
psychologist as well,
I
right?
have I have learned to become all of these things because
Exactly.
a very funny thing. So clients come to me for career acceleration. So they come to me because they've not been promoted, they have not been able to get a hike, or they've just got laid off and they're not able to crack interviews. So that's what they come to me for, right?
Right.
But I have realized over the last 8 years that I've been working with so many leaders that that's just the problem that they are seeing. The real problem is their
Yeah.
self-worth, the
Right.
imposter within, right? The low self-esteem that they carry, the fear of being embarrassed if they raise their opinion, the fear of being rejected. I have had clients, Madhuri, who haven't appeared for interviews for 20 long years. They have stayed in the same toxic environment for 20 years. They've endured so much pain, but they have not gone for the interview because what if I get rejected? That's the only thing,
That fear
right?
of rejection itself puts them down and they don't come out
Yeah,
of it. Hmm.
yeah. So, and you are right. I've become a psychologist because I've learned that we always navigate towards lesser pain. So
Right.
our mind takes us towards pleasure, but that pleasure could be lesser pain. So in
Right.
this case, as an example, the fear of rejection is a much larger pain than enduring the pain of staying in the same organization,
Yeah. But somebody
right?
had to put that into them. Until somebody tells them, they cannot get that as such.
Exactly. So
So,
then, they start working and they realize what is happening. Sometimes they don't even realize. So if we know what is happening, we'll work on it. But we are all working at such a superficial level. that we don't even know what's happening underneath. And 95% of who we are is unconscious.
Correct.
All
So
of these
looking to the
fears,
core is what actually you
yeah,
emphasize.
it's like an
Right.
iceberg. You see the 5%. The behavior,
Mhm.
not going for an interview is a behavior. That's the 5%. Now
Right.
I can push myself. I can be more disciplined. I can say I don't have the willpower and I can do all of that stuff. But you will still not be able to go there because what's stopping us from going for that interview is the 95%.
Correct. It gets so
Right?
interdisciplinary,
So,
right? You do one discipline, but all the other disciplines come into it. So
oh yeah, yeah,
very
absolutely.
challenging, right?
Yeah. So this is at a personal level, and I'm going back to your question because I do
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about the what can be done
Organization.
at a professional level, right?
Yeah.
At an organizational level. So I think again, like I said, the boardrooms and the leadership has to shift towards encouraging their people to be more open, to be more vulnerable, to be more trusting, and it will start from the top. So if I can be that leader who goes and says, I made a mistake yesterday, I'm sorry about it, we will better it tomorrow. You set an example,
Right.
right? Then the people start following you. And I can assure you that we don't have to work on giving them different kinds of bonuses and all that to retain them, right? We are doing so much at an organizational level to maintain and to manage the attrition. But if we
Mm.
can just look at what makes people safe and what can help them to feel,
AC off.
yeah, what can help them to feel comfortable in the environment, I think all of those things will anyway get better. So at an organization level, I would say, be vulnerable, help form the culture where people trust each other, build teams, make it every Friday there can be an hour where people are sharing their mistakes, people are telling what did they do wrong, and don't attach consequences like layoffs to these honest communication. So open, vulnerable, honest communication, systems to help people, upskilling and helping people learn how to talk, how to have conversations, how to give feedback. All of that is, I think, what needs to happen when there is peace. So that when there is a breakdown, people know how to handle it.
Right. So whatever you mentioned, it makes the employees to approach the leader. A lot of times they're scared to approach the leader. So as you mentioned, specifically allocating the time to discuss about their failures, I think, it actually breeds discussion and they can actually come up with the various solutions. It can lead to a brainstorming session. So that can also lead to, better results as such. Right.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
So, where's the line between vulnerability and oversharing in the C suite?
Yeah, yeah. And we've been talking about vulnerability, and I'm a big fan of Brene Brown because she is, the queen who has done so much of research and vulnerability. And I would encourage the audience to go and read her books, because she talks about that in such an empowering manner. And frankly, I didn't realize that vulnerability is a strength. And but how do we? There's a difference between how do we show up vulnerable, right? Um, so it's not about just going and opening up and just bursting out. That's not vulnerability.
Right.
That sometimes we can mistake oversharing, which is
Mm,
like I'll get too personal or I'll just tell everything that's on my mind. And I think it's not, if I'm feeling angry, I'm just going to blurt it out and I'm going to be aggressive. That's vulnerable. That's who I am. No, that's not right. And that is why it's so important to teach people how to be respectfully vulnerable. In the organizational context, vulnerability could be, you know what, entering into this presentation, I'm a little nervous,
mm,
and I hope that it goes well because a lot depends on the outcome of this presentation, right? Now, just saying that out loud actually calms our nervous system,
correct.
right? So vulnerability is about not hiding our nervousness, not hiding that I am, and not feeling ourselves weak, and not shaming ourselves for feeling a certain way, or or saying something out loud, or raising an idea which got rejected, you know. So when I'm able to distinguish a behavior from my identity, so I am bad versus I did something which didn't have the right result. It's a big difference when
Yes. Yes.
that actually distinguishes between and helps people to become more vulnerable. So when I'm not taking everything on my own self, like it doesn't hurt me, it doesn't impact my self worth, right? Then I am open and I can be honest and I can say, yeah, I made a huge mistake which had an impact, but how do we move forward from here? I don't
Right.
have to hide because it's not about I am bad, it's about I did something which didn't have the right result, right? So vulnerability is also a very nuanced thing. And in the
Mm,
name of vulnerability, we don't want people to just go out there and blurt what's on their mind and just overshare. Vulnerability will lead to connection. Oversharing will actually lead to disconnection.
correct. So that articulation is so important, right? So how you put it across and having that composure and balancing, expressing the vulnerability. So, I mean, just balance it out where exactly and how you exactly you need to show that. That's perfectly worded it. True.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally
So,
resonate.
you know,
Yeah.
as an example, for example, in the meeting, if I agree with, what you say, so, oh, Madhuri, this is a great point that you have raised. I'm totally with you, right? So I'm
Yeah.
open with you. But then I go outside of the meeting and then I'm
Hmm.
gossiping about that, or I'm, saying something behind your back. Now,
Right.
I can't name it as vulnerability that I am being vulnerable and I'm sharing. No, this is again shaming. This
Correct.
is not being vulnerable. This is just oversharing and
Hmm.
picking up the wrong meaning of vulnerability,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I think language, communication, the whole corporate setup needs to be
Yes.
able to help their leaders voice what's on their mind in a
Hmm.
much better and a much matured manner, I would say.
Right.
People don't know how to speak their mind. They just say what they have to say.
Correct. So, what recovery protocol restores cognitive bandwidth fastest after a personal day?
After a, sorry, say that
Personal
again.
dip. What
Personal
recovery
tip, huh?
protocol
Acha.
restores cognitive
Okay.
bandwidth fastest after a personal dip?
Okay, okay. Yeah, so it's the same thing, like I said before. You've had a personal dip. First, understand that growth is not always linear. It will
Right.
not always be like this. There will be peaks and valleys. There will be good and bad days. After working on myself for the last so many years, there are still days when I'm disappointed at myself, or
Mm,
I feel that, I have not reached where others with so much of experience would have reached, or I'm not doing as much as I should be doing. These are all normal thoughts to have. But how do we deal with those thoughts is what differentiates between healthy growth versus unhealthy growth,
correct.
right? So there will be good days and bad days. There will be days when you are achieving. There will be great coaching sessions and there'll be not so good coaching sessions. All of that is a part of my journey. And I believe that sitting with myself with a lot of compassion, with a lot of kindness, and not attaching the outcome to who I am. That is my biggest learning over the last 8 years. And that is exactly what I keep reinforcing to all my coaches, that you are not your outcomes and you are also not your thoughts.
Right.
So just because you think I am a failure doesn't mean you are a failure. It's just a thought, right?
Right.
So allow it to come, investigate, become curious, learn
Yes.
what it has to tell you, and let it go out. When we attach it to who we are and we become failures, that's the downward trend, that's unhealthy.
So
So
it's
to
all
recover,
about the conditioning and the thought process, how we take it positively, how we reinforce that positivity in the team.
yeah,
So that all
yeah,
really
yeah.
matters. Yeah.
And I ask a simple question, and sometimes that's a hard hitting question. So I'm going to ask to the audience here as well. And the question is, are you your own cheerleader?
Hmm.
Sometimes we are our own biggest critic. Like we
I
are
know.
so cruel to ourselves in our mind. And we have to recognize that that voice could be somebody else's voice. It could be our mom speaking, it could be our dad speaking, it could be a teacher speaking. We have internalized what has been told to us during our growing up years, and we start believing that voice is ours. So again, my question is, are you your own best friend? Are you your own biggest cheerleader? Can you stand up for yourself? And if not, this is the time that you learn how to do it,
Exactly.
right? And one more thing that I keep saying again and again, and I take every opportunity to say it because I think it will never be enough, is that I am enough no matter what. I don't have to prove and achieve a certain number of things to feel good about myself. I am enough just the way I am. I'm not perfect. You know, perfectionism is another big topic that is actually a result of and leads to breakdowns where we believe that there is some line, I have to reach somewhere and I have to be the best at whatever I do, and I need to be a perfectionist. Perfectionists are biggest people who are people who are facing imposter syndrome at at this level,
Hmm.
right? So
Great.
they don't allow themselves to do new things. They stop themselves. They don't get into. I was that. Like I never took up assignments where there was even a little chance of failure,
Okay. Yeah.
right? You don't say yes because what if I fail or what if I don't do well? For me, being a beginner was the biggest challenge. I had to perform at this level,
Correct.
right? So you are enough no matter what. You don't have to prove yourself to anybody
True.
and to yourself. So believe in that. You're not perfect, but that's okay.
That's okay. Embrace the imperfections with grace, is what they say, actually. I know.
Yeah,
And be a little easy with yourself. We're always very harsh on ourselves, being very
yeah,
critical about ourselves and always set over ambitious objectives, goals.
yeah,
And if you don't reach them out, you feel low and you set unrealistic targets for yourself at times. So a
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
times this does happen. Yeah. I
yeah.
think I
And
always
for
tell my
me,
students, give a big shout out, to yourself when you're doing really good.
oh, yeah, absolutely. That's such a beautiful way of looking at it. And
Yes,
can we enjoy the journey of reaching our goal instead of waiting for that
exactly.
goal to be accomplished?
Enjoy the process also. Always don't
Yeah,
enjoy only the outcome. Enjoy the process as well. Right.
yeah.
Like
Because
you said.
sadly, the reality is there is always a higher mountain next to the mountain that you climb,
True. True.
right? So there's never the end of it. Like if you earn 10 lakhs today, there's always a 15 lakhs. Then if you earn 15 lakhs, there's always a 20 lakhs. People are earning 1 crore also. There are people who are making 50 crores also. So where is the end of it? Like,
So, as you said, I think it percolates down to, are you happy? It just talks about the happiness quotient at times. So,
yeah,
and I think the contentment, it really matters a lot of times.
yeah, yeah.
And it's very
You know,
subjective.
yeah, there's a beautiful word which I have started using more, which is fulfillment.
Ah, right.
Because fulfillment includes the pain as well. Like
Yeah,
I said, career or any kind of growth is not linear. So there will be sad days, there will be bad days, there will be painful days, there will be depressing days, there will be days when you won't get up from the bed. But that's fine. You can
true.
still be fulfilled.
Yes, that's a right term. Yes.
Yeah.
So, Deepa, any example of a coachee who turned around personal or professional life after a breakdown?
Yeah, like I said, all of my coaches come not like in the deepest phase, but they come to me when they have tried things and it's not
Hmm.
working out, right?
Yeah,
All of us um, think we can figure it out, but I have learned that if we are inside a bottle, then you can't read the label of the bottle, right? If
right.
you're stuck inside the bottle, then you can't read the label of the bottle. So somebody from outside has to read that label.
Hmm.
So a lot of times when we are in problem, we
Yes.
cannot be, we cannot see our problem because we are too deep into it. We are too attached to it. right? So most of my coaches, all of my coaches come to me when, they are facing some kind of a breakdown. Either there's the confidence which is, which has been wavering. They have not been performing to that same level. There's a lot of self-doubt.
Mm.
They've not been able to take decisions. They're just very depressed based on where they are in their life. It could be relationships that are not working for them. A lot of things are happening in life,
Mm.
right? So, like I said, I'm very hopeful because I'm working with coaches right now who have faced breakdowns, but they have
Okay.
been courageous enough to come out
Talk.
of that environment,
Nice.
reach out to me, work with me during their sabbatical, and figuring out what's the next best thing that they can take. So they're not forcing themselves to pick up a job, go there, perform, achieve,
Okay.
right?
True.
They're okay to take it slow. And taking it slow does not mean that you are not performing.
Exactly.
Sometimes all we need to do is take it slow,
Right. I envy
right?
all your coaches. They have the best mentor.
Yeah, thank you.
Really nice.
I attempt to help them see different perspective of their life. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like, the first question was, what are the blind spots? Like, we can't see our own blind spots.
Mm. Right.
And sometimes if we need help to look at what my blind spots are and then investigate into them, and curiosity is our best companion. Like, get curious about what's happening or what's not happening, um and move forward with that.
When the problem is diagnosed at the ground level, no, only then we can come up with a relative solution.
Yeah,
If that
exactly.
itself is a failure, then any result you give will definitely not reach the desirable outcome.
Yeah,
True.
absolutely,
And you need
absolutely,
a
well
right
said.
mentor to diagnose, it at the root cause level. So that really
Yeah,
matters. Right.
absolutely, absolutely. I think that's very, very important. And again, I was hearing a podcast, and there they were saying that it's like reading books, right? Not, I
Mm.
might not enjoy reading all kinds of book or all genres of books. So I might pick a book, I don't like it, I leave it, and then I choose a different book, right? It's okay to do that. So it's the same case when we are going and working with coaches or when we are going through therapy. Not all coaches or therapists will be the right ones for you. What
Right.
happens is, and what I have seen is, we go to one person, we don't connect, there is a disconnect, and we
Mm.
just say, oh, this doesn't work for me. Coaching is not for me. Therapy is not for me. We just, the whole
Shrug it.
modality we say is not working for me. But I
Right.
want people to understand that different therapists, different coaches work in different ways. Like we shop for the books that work for us, like we shop for the clothes that work for us and we look good in them. Just try out different therapists and different coaches because you will find the right one for you. And
Right.
taking support is not weakness. Asking for help is strength. And I have my coach. I go through therapy. My daughter takes therapy. Like, it's not a bad thing. It helps us to look at ourselves differently.
Yes. That's so exhaustive, Deepa. You almost cover all the dimensions. It's right.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's so resonating, actually.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So, what daily practice moved them from shame to data driven action? What daily practice would you suggest that actually moved the employees or the leaders from shame to data driven action?
Yeah. So I would say, if you're a leader and you have a team working for you, do regular one-on-ones. Like, check with them and ask them how they are doing and what challenges are they facing and what support would they need from you to deliver better, do better. Become their cheerleader, and it'll
Mm.
help them to build confidence in themselves, right? And the rituals are the ones that we've been talking about: um, journaling, reflection, regular conversation with yourself, curiosity, feeling enough, not needing to prove ourselves. All of those are small small things, asking yourself before end of the day, spending time with yourself, all of those things, doing what you love doing. Another big thing that I have seen with a lot of leaders is that they believe that their job has to be the be all and end all of everything. I need to find everything in my job. But sometimes job is something that's paying your EMIs. And you need to find other things that help you create fulfillment in your life, right? So life is a balance of multiple things. Your job or your organization might not be the thing which will give you everything. So then how do you create time for yourself? How do you create space for yourself? How do you build hobbies around your job and setting boundaries of what is possible, not possible? I think all of those rituals and best practices help us to live a much more fulfilled and creative life.
Right. So I was just reading last week. So they have some of the companies have the pets in the office. That actually acts as a stress buster for a lot of employees. To combat the day-to-day stress and that mundane life. So that's so quirky. I just want to know, really, do they work in the corporate structures, or are they just the fad?
I think corporates are trying everything that they can to to create an environment where people are happy and people are fulfilled and they're doing their best, right? So all of these are experimentations, and some will work, some will not work. But I go back to what makes us human,
Mm.
and there are people in the organization. So uh, your boss is the organization to you, so if
Right.
my boss is a good boss and they're taking care of me and they're listening to me and they're curious and they're helping me grow, the organization is great to me. I don't need the pets, I don't need a gym, I don't need anything, right?
True.
But when
Yeah.
the problem becomes when the boss is not playing that role,
Ah,
right? Now the challenge is I need to look at other things in the organization because this clearly is not working.
right. Right.
So, yeah, as humans, we all need belonging, we all need validation, we all need a lot of love, we need to fit in, we need to be able to be ourselves and feel safe. Those are our primary, primal needs. So, if the organization can fill this through their leaders, we don't need these things. Yeah, they can be accessories and, we might use them once in a while. But can we build organizations that are based on these parameters versus all of these experiments that we're doing?
Actually, yes, you're taking me back to something called Hawthorne experiments. That's
Mm-hmm.
what he says. You give the primary. The secondary is like it's okay. Even if it is present or not present, it's okay. But
Yeah,
without giving the primary, you just ensure all the infrastructure and all the extra paraphernalia is there. But what's the use? The core part is missing. So that doesn't
yeah,
really work as a motivator at all. Yes.
absolutely, absolutely. You put it so right. Yes.
Well, Deepa, it was so enlightening. Oh, I can't just word it out. Really, really, it was really good. Thanks for sharing all your insights and your valuable time.
Thank you
So,
so much, Madhuri. Your questions, it's the quality of the questions that determine the quality of the answers. So your questions were great and they helped me also go deep into what I do on a daily basis and share some of my experiences and thoughts. So thank you so much for asking those questions and being a patient listener as well.
thank you so much. And I would like to accredit Prem Kumar AS for the questions. He's framed such beautiful questions. And the topic is
Yeah,
so paradoxical, so counterintuitive, as you mentioned. It's a very complex topic, but you broke down so effectively, it's so resonating with the audience. I'm sure audience are going to really agree with me in this. So when I
thank you
read the
so much.
topic, I felt, it's going to be a little complex, but you made it so lucid. It's so acceptable, palatable. Really nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you
And I
so much.
thank all the
Thank you so
audiences
much.
out there, which is to all the LinkedIn audiences who've been attending the session. So I would like to know if there are any comments. Okay. So with that, I guess we can conclude the session. Thanks so much, Deepa. And
Thanks,
please
Madhuri.
do follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope you found this discussion very valuable. Thank you for joining us today on LinkedIn Live. Our next podcast is scheduled on 22nd July 2025 at 6:30 p.m. IST. And the topic is cyber threats meet industrial systems, why OT security needs to be prioritized. So hope to see you all on the next episode. Thank you.